for? Just kind of stuff like that, or like tell us about a time that you demonstrated this skill. So for those last questions that were more like job interview style, I did kind of take some time to think about what I would say for some of these questions. So if you just kind of Google like typical job interview questions, like describe a time that you've shown empathy, describe a time that you've been faced with a communication problem, you can kind of think to yourself what scenario you would write down in that situation and kind of prepare a good answer beforehand, and that's going to help you save a lot of stress during the actual test. So in terms of how I structured my answers, I kind of followed the BMO book way, but there are a lot of different methods. This is just the one that worked for me. So basically how I started out, my answer is by stating what the problem was. Which person in the scenario or multiple people are you concerned about? And then the second thing that I did was I gathered all the facts. So the best advice I can possibly give you about CASPer is don't make any assumptions. Make a very clear statement that you want to gather all the facts before you make any conclusions about what you want to do. So you can do this in a statement by saying something like, before I proceed, I want to have a private, non-judgmental conversation with blank in order to gather more information in regard to blank. This is going to make it very clear that you want to gather all the information possible to the people that are scoring your test. So once I had that down, then I wrote down my if-then statements. So normally these statements are going to be based on the information gathering in the previous step. So it's going to look something like, if I learn this, then I'm going to do this. And then the last step is to write your solution to the problem and your explanation as to why you chose this solution. You don't really want to be wishy-washy in this. You want to choose a concrete answer and back it up. So say why you chose this solution and why you think it's the best one. And normally the best solution is going to be the one that causes the least harm to the most amount of people. Also, just as a side note, I did some Astroff tests, which are a paid resource, just to help me prepare for the CASPer. They're the exact same format as the actual CASPer, and they really helped me feel more confident before the actual test. And I also used Prep Match, which is a free resource. So overall, I would say my best tips are to remain non-judgmental, gather all the facts, as I said previously. Your solution should be the one that causes the least harm to the most amount of people. You're really going to want to show empathy in this test. This is a really important skill for a veterinarian to have. And lastly, my last tip is to get current OVC students or people who have taken the CASPer before to review your answers, or you can swap with friends. And that is it from me.
Everyone's in there. How's it going, guys? My name's Ryan Isabella. I'm also going to talk to you about the CASPer side of things too. Public speaking is not one of my strong suits, so if you catch me with my head down during a lot of this, that's probably why. So I recently gained admission to this year's class of OVC. I graduated from McMaster in 2019, took some time off, came back, got my marks up, and then applied. I was nervous about that 4 application limit, so I wanted to make sure I had a good application before actually coming into it. I wish you guys the best of luck if you're applying this year. It's a long, grueling process, but you'll get through it, and just stay the course as you go through the whole thing. Oh yeah, no one can see me. Okay. So I found out recently that finished one of the top 2 in our class in this CASPer test scenario, and I had an idea that I did really well, but not to that extent. So I really wanted to think about what I did in prep to make sure that you guys have the best information possible when coming here. I kind of boiled it down to 2 major components that I felt really, really helped me. The first one was emotional regulation. Like this test, I won't go too much into the format because she kind of did that for you, but it's meant to be stressful. It's quick, it's fast paced. You have 5 minutes in each room to answer 3 questions, and then they kind of shoot you into the next one, whether you finish or not. So a big part of it is if you have a bad room, if you don't get what you want down, if you misspell a lot of things, it's okay. It's one room. Put it behind you. Just kind of put it to the side, and you got to look past it. You got to move forward to the next one. You can't let it snowball into the rooms as you go. It's tough in the moment because you want to kind of express those feelings, and there's so much at stake knowing this is your vet school application. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure the rest of the test is up to quality because it's a big part of it. When you're done the test, you can really take time to break down those emotions, kind of go through it and feel what you got to feel. But for the moment, really, really put that aside if you can. And just kind of understand that it's okay to be stressed in this moment. Like, it is designed to be stressful, but it's what you do with that stress that's going to determine how successful you're going to be in the long run. The second part that benefited me a lot, and again, Kira touched on it too, was just making sure that you do some form of professional training. I found a reliable company. It was Robert Asteroff that she mentioned. I didn't use the BMO side of things. I just used him. And he sold kind of prep courses and practice tests for the CASPer. And at the time, I think I spent around $150 on their products, and it was for like multiple tests and multiple courses. And for me, I was working full time, so it was a little easier to part ways with that money. But I understand there can be some like financial limitations here if we wanted to do that side of things. Either way, the quality of my answers from before doing those materials and practice tests and courses was night and day difference to when I did it afterwards. It was a huge, huge improvement. They give you a great structure, a great format. They kind of talk to you about how you should be going about different problems, like by approaching it unbiased, gathering information, being empathetic, those kind of major key points they're looking for. And the thing is that 5 minutes is stressful. It's such a short amount of time. And I'm personally not the fastest typer in the world. I'm very average at typing speed. But once you have a format and a structure, it really makes that 5 minutes feel longer because you know what you have to do in each kind of question. You know how to approach things, and you can kind of structure it accordingly in that sense. So I found that I had maybe like a quick couple seconds to look back at my answers, and I saw a mess of red lines telling me I mistyped a bunch of things. But again, they don't mark you on that. It's about what you're saying, how you're saying it, and what you're kind of bringing to the table from an empathetic, ethical perspective. Those are kind of my big things. The nice part is once you've done some practice and you've gone through these courses and you feel more confident in the way you can answer questions, the emotional regulation side of things becomes a lot easier because you feel more confident in your abilities. You understand that, hey, if I didn't get it this time, I can get it next time because I know the format, I know the rhyme, I know the reason. It's pretty rinse and repeat at that point. So if you kind of combine those two things together, you have some confidence in your abilities, you'll give yourself the best chance at being successful. The biggest thing I think I want to say at the end is just it's a pretty large part of your application. It's about 20% of your mark, at least when we did it. I don't know if it's similar for the next round of things. So don't take it lightly. Make sure you give yourself ample time to prepare. You give yourself the best chance of success because it's going to set you up nicely for when you go into those interviews. You're going to be sitting at a nicer spot than if you just kind of said, I'll throw a little bit into this and I won't give it my all kind of thing. So that's kind of the end of what I have to say. So thank you guys for having me. Just like space it so you can see both of us in there. Okay, there you go. Nice.
Not right now, so.
Yeah, but if anyone has questions, feel free.
Yeah.
How long were your responses for each question? How many sentences or something like that?
Do you remember?
Yeah. I did 5 sentences per question was my kind of typical amount. But then again, I'm a pretty fast typer. So they don't have to be that long, but I found like with the formula that I was using, it tended to be around 5 sentences.
Yeah, I'd say around 4 or 5 is kind of where I hovered around for the most part. Some you can elaborate more on, others a little bit less, but I think that's a good kind of benchmark to set for yourself for sure.
Was it like kind of like straightforward points kind of style?
Yeah, I mean, connecting words and stuff are nice because it makes things sound more succinct, but at the end of the day, like you have to kind of weigh that against how much time you have to answer all those questions. And again, they're not marking you much on grammar and spelling. It's more about what you're saying and how you're saying it. So focus more on that, I think, than anything. Yeah, go for it.
Were there prep courses that you guys took? Were they just like an online type of resource you did on your own time, or was it like a live type of thing?
Mine was online, just on my own time. Yeah, I just kind of made sure I found a window where I felt like it was a good enough amount of time to prepare, and then I started purchasing the courses and going through them, sometimes twice if I felt like I needed a little more help too.
Yeah, I didn't take a prep course personally. I just kind of relied on people I knew at OVC kind of helping me through the process.
Yeah.
But I did like Asteroff tests, but not the actual course.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat that says, you change rooms physically, question mark?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that might have been confusing. Totally virtually. Like you'll go through one of the questions that'll give you a 5-minute window. When the timer ends, they shoot you into another part of it. You get probably about like what, 5-10 seconds to kind of gather yourself
Yeah, very short.
around that.
10.
So 10?
Yes.
So take a drink of water, deep breath, lower the heart rate, whatever you got to do to kind of get right back to where you need to be, and then they shoot you into
And
another
there's a
one
10-minute break too.
Yes.
halfway through. That's important.
Time total you say you put into preparation for CASPer?
I probably went a little overboard, not gonna lie. I was very neurotic. I probably spent like a good at least like an hour a night, probably around there. But then again, you probably don't need that much. I just really wanted to be as prepared as possible.
Clearly it worked.
Yeah.
For me, I probably gave myself like around 2.5 weeks. I kind of looked at it every day if I could, but I think rather than thinking about like a number of time, probably just think about how long, like keep going until you feel comfortable and
Yeah.
answering the questions.
You can do it that time. It's not like
Oh, no. Yeah, they give you all the material at once and you can kind of burn through it if you wanted to. Yeah.
So do they mark you at all? Not just mention as a- Right.
From what I know, they don't mark you at all on grammar. Like if you, yeah, like Ryan was saying, like literally my thing was like full of spelling mistakes, but obviously it didn't impact us. So
Yeah, it's more, and even if you like don't finish a thought, let's say you get like halfway through a sentence or something, like they try to see where you were going with it and
Yeah.
extrapolate if you can, because they know it's a time crunch.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Did you guys manage to finish like all the questions each time, or was there like sometimes you were like, oh, I couldn't finish this one in time?
Personally, I got answers down for everything, but there was like definitely questions where I was like, I wish I had time to say more. So that's when you kind of really have to exercise that. Okay, put it behind you, move on to the next one. We're going to hit it hard next time, kind of thing.
yeah, same here. I pretty much answered all the questions, and that'll just kind of come with preparation. Like I remember when I first started prepping, I would literally get through like the first question in the 5 minutes, and that was it. But then as you get more comfortable, you'll definitely be able to start answering more of the questions and do like your 5 sentences per question kind of thing.
So we have a question in the chat asking, what was the resource that you mentioned? Like, what was it called? Robert.
Oh, Astroff.
Astrup, is it ASTROFF?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you use BMO as well.
Yeah, and I also use BMO.
Preparing for my upcoming CASPer this year,
Mhm.
and I'm using the Vivo product. I know you mentioned how the quality of your answer changed. Was there someone grading it for you, or? just a personal-
Personally, there was no one grading it, I guess. I just kind of worked with like an OVC student who I knew who took the test the previous year, and she was kind of just critiquing my answers. But I would say if you kind of follow the BMO format, as they call it, your answers will definitely improve with time.
Does the other resource you were using have?
Not in the courses, they kind of show you the difference between like kind of a lackluster answer to something that will get pretty good marks. And I just, from self-evaluation, I was looking at my answers and they were not great at all from the
Yeah.
beginning. So then once I went through those kinds of things and I understood how they wanted them asked or answered, I saw like very, very big change in how I was
Yeah.
going about things.
Yeah.
I had someone grade me
Yeah.
in the Astroff course.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, if you pay extra, you can get someone to grade you.
I had a first year math medical student who scored high and it was incredible. Highly recommend. It was
There we go.
expensive, but
Yeah.
Go for it. Either one.
Oh, did you guys use the practice test on the Altus website? Like, did you find that helpful?
Mhm.
Yeah, I would do it just so that you know the format
It's
is
the
the
exact
biggest
same.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the way they walk you through every room and how it operates is the exact same as the actual test.
Okay.
So it's good to see it.
So I'm sure CASPer like evaluators, they know these different formats that people use, and they can probably recognize like if you prepared. Are there any that are frowned upon, like certain prep things that people say you shouldn't use or stay away from, or do you not haven't heard of anything like that?
Personally, I haven't heard of anything like that. I just felt more comfortable going with something that was like a little more proven
Mhm.
and kind of verified rather than looking on like Reddit forums or
Yeah,
something,
right.
right? For someone's answer, because you never know like if that person actually got in or not. So a lot of these places are kind of proven. And for me, that was like a nice comfort. because
That
I knew.
Astrock one is a pretty well received, widely used.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
helped me out a good amount.
Yeah, I'd say
so.
like Astrop and BMO are like the two that people normally use. I don't know if you guys have any other
I
ones.
use BMO.
Yeah.
It was a little expensive and I don't think that it helped me as much as free resources online. There's one, I can't remember what it's called, but you put your answer in and somebody else looks at it. It
Oh,
gives
Prep
you a
Match.
grade. Is that
Yeah.
Prep Match? I used that one. I found that more helpful than BMO. So yeah, we're gonna Prep Match.
I only used free resources. I didn't pay for any of the programs, but I also have done 2 interviews, so I've kind of been prepping for 2 years. So you don't have to use a paid thing, but obviously it can really help you. Just wanted to throw that out there too. I didn't get top 2, but I was in the top quartile, so did okay enough.
Mhm.
Yeah, me too. And I found working up your stamina for CASPer is really important. And the Astrof course set that I bought had 2 course like videos that you watch that were kind of interactive. And then I had 4 tests and they increased in difficulty up until the 4th one. And then I had 2 coaching sessions after my 3rd and 4th test and saw how I improved. And I found that by the 4th test, my stamina was so much better. And the Altus one is also very good.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like if you Google like CASPer questions, like I can like a classic one I can think about off the top of my head would be like, oh, 2 of your coworkers are in a fight about like this situation. What do you do? That type of thing. Like it's nothing related to vet med per se. But it's more related to things that they want you to exhibit in vet med, so like good communication, good empathy, good problem solving. So just kind of scenarios that kind of revolve around that are good CASPer scenarios. And if you just like Google CASPer scenarios, a bunch of them will come up.
The question in the chat asking how long is the test and you can take the CASPer whenever you want, sort of thing, right?
Yeah, I think.
They have set times, if I remember correctly. Like you have to sign up for a certain time. Me wanting to give myself as much as prep as possible, I signed up for the last possible one. So you don't get to rewrite it. If you sign for the first one, you can't write it the other time. So you just kind of pick whichever one you like the best.
Yeah, if you go on the CASPer website, it tells you which dates for our school you can write. And for Canadians, you have to write it before the end of January, I think it is, so that we get the marks before the beginning of March.
Yeah, like if you go to the Altus website, and then you kind of sign up with OBC, it'll give you like a list of possible dates. So you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
It'll just do it automatically for you.
It'll tell you.
Yeah.
Sorry, how long?
I think it's like 5 minutes a question. And
Like an hour and a
5
bit, I
minutes
think.
a question, 12 questions, and an optional 10-minute break
Yeah.
in the middle.
So
so
You
it's
don't
like
have to take it. I
Hour
took half
20.
of it, got anxious, and kept going.
yeah.
I used up the time.
To 120 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
A little less.
Yeah, I think it's longer this year just because like I mentioned they're adding like this
Yeah.
new portion. So for us it was a bit shorter, but for you guys it's gonna be what Carly said.
Right around.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's from what I read on the website, it's like 1 minute per question for the video. Yeah.
I took the CASPer test last cycle, and then they asked me to do like the trials for the video one.
Okay.
It's about 3 minutes
Yeah.
total, but it's like 1 minute per question.
Yeah.
So they still ask you 3 questions like
Yeah.
they would. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like because hypothetically you're supposed to talk faster than you type,
Yeah.
which is why they do it that way. But I mean, again, prep will definitely help you with that. And you can use like the same kind of format
Mhm.
for your spoken answers as you do with the written answers.
Would you guys like take notes when you're watching the video or reading the question, or did you just dive right into typing out your answer?
I personally didn't, but I think it could help for sure. I definitely did during the interview. Like when we had time to contemplate things, I was jotting down kind of points I wanted to hit. But for the CASPer, I was kind of just trying to soak up as much information on the scenario that I could, and then come at it as unbiased as possible. Like, you really have to admit that you don't have all the facts, and that you want to dig for more facts before you make any kind of decision on how to go about it.
Yeah, personally, I did take notes during the video. They weren't like extensive or anything. I know like some resources, they have like a note kind of format. I didn't use any of that. I just kind of wrote down like key points, like the people's names, because obviously it's going to look better in your answer if you're like, oh, like Karen did this rather than the woman did this. So just kind of showing that you like remembered those like details like that is going to kind of help out your answers a little bit. So I would just write down like key information like that, like nothing extensive, because again, like the videos are only like 30 seconds long, so there's not really much to write anyway.
Reviews on the Altus website, can you only do them once? Can you go back to them multiple times?
You can go back.
Yeah, I would assume
I
you
don't
can
think the
go
question
back.
changed though,
I
right?
think there's only
Yeah.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's one set of questions, but you can do it multiple times.
Yeah.
It's the full length, so it's full,
Yeah.
full thing, but
It's
I
like
would imagine there's only one.
It's definitely worth doing it
I'm,
though.
I'm pretty sure I did it a couple of times, and I think it was one set of questions, but you can go back as many previous.
Mm. Go for it.
Sorry,
That's okay. Sorry here.
another that students I'm not beneficial, either in hindsight or you did read it.
I didn't go over any specific ethical material, and like definitely like a vet ethics book. I don't know how applicable it would be apart from like kind of the broad themes, because there really wasn't much like case-based veterinary things in there. If anything, there wasn't anything
Yeah,
at
no,
all.
there's
Actually, it was all
nothing.
just
Yeah, I know what book it is.
I read it, would not recommend, there's nothing better.
there we go. Great answer.
Just like BMO.
I think it was more helpful pre-pandemic when the MMIs were
Yeah.
in person and those were slightly, I don't know. It was just maybe more applicable, but online resources are good.
Yeah,
now.
because medical students write this same CASPer too, so it can't be that based or they would have no idea. So it's more broad.
And it was hardly even like medical.
It was.
No.
Yeah.
Family stuff, workplace stuff, school group project kind of stuff, like those kind of scenarios they put you in, and how you navigate whatever ethical problem they present to you.
Yeah, that's another classic one. Like a school group problem is like a classic
Someone's not doing their
CASPer.
work, and
Yeah.
how do you kind of get to the bottom of that without ruffling any feathers? And
I know something I was worried about was like in the BMO book, it talks about like hot topics in the world.
Oh,
And I freaked out about that. Don't.
Thank you guys so much.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we can move on to the top interview achievers round.
Okay, my name is Alyssa. I'm very excited to be here today. This is my 5th time attending this event. Just on the other side this time, I found this super helpful. So I hope it's already been helpful and will continue to be. So I just finished my 4th year of biomedical science here at Guelph last year, and this was my first application. So yeah, when I first found out I had an interview, the very first thing I did was I took my BIF points. Does everybody know what the BIF is at this point, or is any? Okay, so all of the experiences I listed on there, I put them in a great big Word document, and then for each experience, I really reflected on all of them, because I'm not sure if your interview format is identical to ours, but it was our responsibility to bring in what topics we wanted to talk about into the interview. They didn't have it in front of them. So knowing your BIF like the back of your hand is going to save your life. So basically what I did, just to kind of structure it for myself, under each experience, I thought about what skills did I learn and what did this experience teach me about myself? What did I learn is important for being a good veterinarian? And then thirdly, if applicable, what did I learn about the veterinary profession and the veterinary industry? So of course, that's not going to apply to your non-animal, non-vet experiences, but that's just kind of a general idea. Another point, don't discredit your non-vet, non-animal experiences. Those are showing that you're well-rounded and likely going to make you the most standing out, because everyone has such different interests. I've met so many people in our class who have completely different interests. And if you can take those experiences and say, I learned this through this completely unrelated experience, and that's going to make me a good vet or a good vet student, because I think that will help a lot. I also thought of any memorable stories I had from any of these experiences, because those are also going to help. I remember sitting and thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's worked in a small animal clinic. Everyone's done large animal. I'm not unique at all. But then I realized, what specific case really made me know I want to be a vet. Nobody else has that story, and this story from this nobody else has. So definitely prepare those. Don't rehearse them so you sound rehearsed, because that will not sound nice, but even just jotting them down and then going over them and just having them at the front of your memory, I found super helpful. So from there, I just started talking to myself a lot, and I, for like 3 or 4 days, just talked about my experiences on the way to work. I had a 45-minute drive, so I just sat in the car. People probably thought I was crazy, but that's what I did. And then once I kind of felt comfortable with all of my VIF points, I moved into practice questions. So if you just Google veterinary admission questions, there's tons. Of course, you don't know what they're actually going to ask you, but there's only so many things they can really say. And I also practice with our time restraint. So we were given 2 minutes to think about the question, 5 minutes to answer, which sounds really daunting at first, but when you practice enough, you kind of get used to what 5 minutes feels like and how many different points you can have. So personally, 3 was mine. So I would practice, I'd read the question, jot out like a super like little skeleton note of what I wanted to say, and then do my 3 points and conclude and summarize everything. I also worked with future MeMD through interview coaching. This was probably my biggest recommendation. It is a bit expensive, I will admit, but it was super helpful because I had a current OVC student working with me, giving me tips and simulating the interview process. Because what you'll find is it's very easy to practice the content, less easy to practice the nerves you feel in the situation, and not stopping and starting over when you don't like your answer. You have to learn how to work through it, even if maybe you didn't start quite the way that you wanted to. I respected my interview coach so much because she was who I wanted to be, so I was scared of her in a good way. She was absolutely lovely, but I just found that super, super helpful. So those are the main things I did to prepare. And then just lastly, there's more, but we can get to that in the Q&A. The night before, I didn't do any prep. I took a bubble bath, I took my dogs for a walk, and I sat there and kind of tried to zen myself out and say, okay, this is your opportunity to sell yourself. All they've seen so far is numbers, but this is your opportunity to say, this is why I deserve to be here. And that kind of got me excited instead of anxious. And smile. You don't want to be telling a monotone story. My interview coach told me, try and think of it as you're telling a story to a friend. You're not going to sit there monotone with no fluctuation in your voice or facial expressions. If it's an emotional story you're telling, show that, because that's going to show that you really care, and it's going to make them more inclined to listen to you and make you stand out better. So, yeah.
Okay. I think it's so funny that the night before you prepared with a bubble bath, because the night before mine, Valley Village closes at 9 o'clock at night, okay? At 8:52, I said to my mom, we need to go to Valley Village right now and get me a blazer for my interview. And that's what I did. So we'll start out that way. I did a lot of really similar things to Alyssa, but I kind of had like more of a concrete set of steps that I followed to prepare. So the first thing that I did is I looked online, talked to my friends, talked to a whole bunch of different people, and I found questions. So we knew it was an MMI style interview. So I found any MMI style questions I could find, put them in a big old document. So that was my first step. I didn't really study them super hard because I wanted to be able to surprise myself with them. The next thing I did is I worked on figuring out how I would answer them. So I'd pick them at random and I'd say, okay, I got this question. Why would a dog be a good pet? Okay, dogs are good pets because boom, 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 concluding statement. This is why dogs are good pets. I'm very much like a clear, concrete point person. So that's how I found I was best prepared, because when I was just trying to pull it out of my butt, I couldn't make a concrete interview. So I was points, concluding statement.
So after I got a little bit more comfortable with writing things out like that, I started to notice some patterns in the interview questions. And I'm not going to give them away to you, but once you practice a few questions, you'll see some patterns and you'll be like, okay, this is similar to a question I was asked earlier by myself. So I can use the same answer for this question, or I can use the same points, and keep those points in the back of your head, because if you can pull them out like that, you're golden. So again, your toolbox of questions is going to be things from your BIF. So personal experiences at vet clinics, stories, anecdotes, something a mentor taught you maybe, but you're also going to want to look at your non-veterinary experiences, both animal and not. So maybe you were a dancer and it taught you about leadership. That's a great thing to have in the back of your mind to pull out during an interview. So have your toolbox of questions from your BIF. Make sure you have lots of non-veterinary stuff. Like Alyssa said, everybody has worked in a veterinary clinic, but not everyone has played the tuba or went to Russia or something like that, right? So pull out things like that. The next thing that I did is once I figured out how I would write out my answers, I practiced saying them. So as mentioned before, we have 2 minutes to prepare, 5 minutes to say them. You think 5 minutes is not a lot of time, but then you start talking and you realize you can only talk for 2 minutes. So you really have to work on that. So once I got to the point where I could figure out 2 minutes to write, 5 minutes to talk, I kept practicing and practicing and practicing until I'd mastered that. And then the next step from there, I started recording myself. So I would pick myself out a question, I'd do point, and I'd record myself for 5 minutes. That way you can go back and you can pick out some things that you don't really like about your interview. So for me, I talk a lot with my hands. They were waving around, they were so distracting. So I recognized that from recording myself, and I sat on them so that I wouldn't talk with them. So that was one thing that I did. Another thing you can see when you're, are people asking questions, or is this just, okay. Another thing you can see when you're recording is how you appear on camera. So for me, in my room, I was all washed out. The image was terrible. I hated it. So I set up like one of those desk lights, so it was facing me kind of like a spotlight. I had a lot of clutter in my room behind me, so I scooched it all out of the way. I put a plant and a picture, and that was it behind me. So I wanted to have a really professional looking neutral background, because first impressions is all you're going to have with this interview. So I wanted to have a good first impression. And then, as I mentioned before, I had my blazer on. Got to look professional, even though I got it at like 9 o'clock the night before, but that's fine. So yeah, your lighting, your appearance, all of that. You want to make sure it's as good as you want to present yourself to these interviewers. And then the final step, once I had mastered going point, yada, 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 is I got a friend to help me with that. So I made a Zoom call with my dad. He would go in the basement of my house. I was on the top floor, and he would pick questions that were surprises to me from my big question bank so that I wasn't prepared beforehand. And I would actually simulate the interview. And I would go point, and then I would say my little spiel. And that was the best way that I found to prepare myself for the environment without even knowing the questions. So that by the time interview day came, I kind of was comfortable sitting there answering, doing my 5-minute thing. And the only new thing I had to focus on was the questions. But I had my toolbox of BIF ideas and points that I could pull out. So that really made the interview process a lot easier. And then my last little thing is on the interview day, make sure, number one, your pets are put away. So I made sure all my dogs and cats and animals were out of the house when I had my interview. But what I didn't think about was my chameleon, who decided 2 seconds before my interview to go down to the very bottom of his cage where there's a little hole that he could escape from. And so the clock is ticking down on my interview. And I'm watching my chameleon try and escape. So that was really distracting. I would recommend closing up any lizards, fish, amphibians that you have so that they're not doing that. And one other thing that's super, super important is my computer was on like sleep mode. So after 5 minutes, it would go to sleep. But after 5 minutes in your interview, it brings you to a new room where you talk to a new person. So my computer would turn off and I had to open it back up. So make sure your computer is set to not sleep. So yeah, to limit stress. That's all I have.
It was maybe like to move a bit.
More stress. I don't know.
Hello, hi.
My name's Carly Robinson. I got in after my 3rd application. So if you are like me, you can do it. I did a lot of the same things to prepare for my interview. First, I created a bunch of answers to a bunch of questions that I found online, just general interview questions. And then making sure that you're very familiar with what you put on your BIF and how that would make you a great veterinarian. Then I definitely practiced the format. So we had the Kira platform, which I think they'll be using again. So it was very user-friendly, nothing to be afraid of in that sense. But it was important to practice the 2 minutes to prepare the question and then 5 minutes to talk about it. During the 2 minutes, I did write some notes on a blank piece of paper. I found that very helpful. So I created a template that I followed for every single question. Structuring my answers really helped me just become more comfortable, and you're in a new virtual room with new interviewers. So just getting over that initial hump of nerves with a sentence that I had already practiced and knew like the back of my hand. So I didn't have to really think until I was a sentence in. And by that point, I was already more comfortable. I found that really helpful. So yeah, no matter what the question was, I always started with something like, "Hi, my name is Carly Robinson, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk to you today." And then I would answer the question, and then I always ended it with, "That is all that I wanted to say for this question. I'm going to check over my notes to make sure there's nothing else I want to add," because if you didn't take up the full 5 minutes, you can hang out there virtually until the time is up. So you don't have to leave early. You can sit there in silence and think if there's anything else you want to add, which could be uncomfortable, but it also could add something important. Generally, I don't think I really had any extra time, but I always said, I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to check over my notes. If I had time, then I would say that. And then thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this interview process. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I ended all of my questions with that, just to show them that you are a person and you know that they're people too. And then I practiced a lot by recording myself as well. So I just opened Photo Booth on my computer and I practiced staring into the webcam. I would watch it back to see what kind of weird eye movements I made, what weird hand motions I made, and you don't really know what you do until you watch it back, and then you go, okay, I need to fix that. I can't do that. So I found it maybe helpful practicing staring into the webcam, because then it kind of gives the sense that you make good eye contact, but it doesn't feel natural to do. So I would recommend practicing that, because you want to look at yourself, you want to look at the other people, but I think staring into that webcam can be helpful. Let's see. Final touches, I made sure that I was super comfortable with the computer that I was using. I made sure I tested my microphone so I knew that it would be clear. I set up the lighting well so that it wasn't backlit. I picked professional clothing that I felt confident in. And then the last key things to remember is that the interview is about yourself. You already know all the answers to all the questions. Nothing will be something that you can't answer. So just having that little tidbit in the back of your mind gives you a little more confidence, helps you remain calm. Practicing even when you're nervous, talking slow and calm so that they get the impression that you're cool and collected, even if you don't feel it on the inside. Remember that the people interviewing you have once been in your position. That I thought about that a lot. They want you to succeed. Once you get that interview, they want you to do well and get in. And so they're on your side, and I thought about that a lot. Each question you have different people interviewing you. So if one question doesn't go well, just like CASPer, you just let that go, move on. Okay, and then deep breath, smile, stand with your chest puffed, make you feel more confident, and that's what I did. And now some questions. Yeah.
Okay, so for the questions for the interviews, were they like just broad general questions or like more specific to the event?
No, just no comment.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that. What are we allowed to say about that, Elizabeth?
I would say they're general questions about your path and your motivation to the vet school and to the career. So that's pretty much covers a lot of ground, but that's what it is. Like they want to get to know you and how you got there kind of thing. Can I just before you start talking, I have my hand up because I wanted to just clarify something. So for the timing, it's 2 minutes, and then you automatically get put in a virtual room with the two interviewers who are either a veterinarian or a faculty member at OVC. And you can't leave the room, I don't think, if you're done early. You have to kind of just sit there awkwardly and kind of, la la la. But it's absolutely fine. Everyone knows that happens. So don't feel like you have to talk for 5 minutes. If you don't, it's fine. But again, like Carly said, that you can certainly take your time, and if you find you have some time, look over your notes, look over, think about your BIF, and you can't have it in front of you, but think about if there's anything else you want to say, and if you think of something else, you're welcome to talk a little bit more, but you will be cut off at 5 minutes.
Yeah, at 5 minutes, it automatically brings you to the next room. So you can't have a little, one more thing, you're done.
Yeah, and there was, like, just for reference, a lot of the times I was going right till the end. You want to make sure you can conclude well. I think if you re-highlight all of your points, that's important, because in case they zoned out or whatever, it just brings it together nicely. But there was one question where I had 50 seconds left after I had said my last word, and I was like, well, okay. And I sat there and I slowly waited. And then I also, at the very end, I was like, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. It was really nice chatting with you. And a lot of them smiled to that, which was really comforting. So yeah, but in regard to the type of question, if you know your BIF, you will be able to answer all of the questions.
Yeah, were you folks all able to hear that in the back? Okay, good. Yeah.
So you said you can't have your BIF with you, but what can you have?
Blank
Nothing.
sheet of paper
Okay.
and a pen.
Okay.
Water.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think I had a glass of water. Yeah.
Lots of talking.
I know you mentioned that they don't have your BIF, but like you have it, and you should know your points and so you can bring it up. Should you go into your questions assuming they know nothing about you, or will they?
So yeah, that was a little unclear. I remember when I was preparing, I think they know your name. One person said, "Hi, Alyssa." I was a little surprised by that. But obviously, if they're grading you, I would assume that they know nothing about you. So this is another thing that my interview coach told me. If you have like 3 stories that you think really stand out about you, or 3 experiences, know them well enough that you can mold them to any question, and make sure you get them across, because it's not like someone's reading in, like, for, I don't know what was cool about mine. I worked on a horse breeding farm, so maybe they're like, oh, that's cool. They don't know. So I had to bring that in.
And because it's different interviews each time, you can reuse the same old story multiple times.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the other thing you have to remember is that you have to answer the question. You might want to talk about your experiences, but each of you'll have the question throughout the whole station, if you want to call it that, and it'll be on the screen so you can keep looking at it. Make sure what you're talking about refers to the question, because, it's one thing to talk about a cool experience, but you have to bring it back to what they're asking at that station.
Yeah, so if they ask you, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say anything.
Why is the dog a good pet?
Why is the dog a good pet? And you're like, yeah, this one time at a horse breeding farm, I did this. Just because you're nervously trying to get it out, it's not, even if it's a wonderful experience and will make you a great vet, you're not doing a good job answering the question. So they're going to be like, next.
Yeah, if you didn't hear that, the question will be there the whole time you're answering. So you can, and if it's a multiple part question, you can make sure you hit all those points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to verify, I guess if it's on Zoom, like the meeting call will be played, right? So
There's a timer counting down. And then when you get to like a certain amount of seconds, the color turns red and starts flashing. It's really fun.
And it was Kira platform. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Kira Talent. That was where the interview was hosted.
The one thing at the end of our interview, we were allowed to give feedback, and I said, maybe do a simulated thing, because I had no idea how the Kira platform was going to work. Like CASPer was super nice. You could simulate the whole thing. So that's what I typed at the end of mine, even though I really just wanted to go run around because I was so excited I was done. So maybe that will come in. I don't know.
And if there had been a simulated one, I would have made sure my screen didn't turn off.
Yeah.
After each question. But I mean, things like that happen, and I freaked out about it after my interview. But I mean, here we are. So if something like that happens to you, it's a technical difficulty. Like water off your back, however the saying is. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat asking about proof of experience for the bid. What does that entail?
Oh, I think like validators is what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's what they're asking about. And every bit of experience will ask you for a validator. It's not like we're going to call everybody and make sure that you did what you did, but in case there's an issue, or it's just to make sure that there's someone that knows that you did that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a boss or a supervisor. It could be someone you did it with. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I think like stone faced one.
That's what you get.
They're not supposed to react to anything you're saying. So be prepared for that. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, but that's just the way it is so that you can answer without their bias.
No follow-up questions. Yeah, I remember being told like they will be stone cold serious and they will say nothing. My first guy said, "Hi, Alyssa, it's so nice to meet you." And I was like, "Hi." And it caught me completely off guard, but it immediately took the stress away. They are excited to hear your answers, even if they don't show it on your face. I know in one station I was like, they hated it, but I don't think I'd be standing here today if that was true. So I stared directly into the little camera thing and didn't look at them the whole time, which maybe sounds rude, but it looks like you're making eye contact that way. And that made me less nervous. And that's how I practiced too, was staring into the computer hole. There's a light on the computer. I'm looking at it right now. Blinding. I put a sticky note over that, and so that allowed me to stay focused longer. I also have talked to people who had to look away because if they stared at that for too long, they said they lost confidence in just their train of thought. So clearly you don't have to do that because they're in the class as well. But
I stared at the faces. I needed
Yeah.
feedback. So that for me was like talking to someone as opposed to like myself at the camera.
And speaking of the talking to someone thing, another thing I did at each station is I introduced myself to the interviewers and I said their names. So I said, "Hi, Dr. Smith. Hi, Dr. blah, blah, blah. My name's Claire. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. The question is blah, blah, blah." Yeah.
I think the introduction and conclusion at the end is really underrated. Like definitely make time to do that.
Because if you're the only person that does it, they're going to remember you for doing it.
Yeah. The summary statement as well too for me, I find just helped. Yeah.
But I got me thinking, so do they dock you marks if you don't maintain eye contact?
We have no.
We don't know how it's marked, and you won't know how it's marked either.
It's just like a in-person interview. That's an important part of it. So we can assume that it's an important part of a virtual interview too. Of course, there's more grace probably because you are on a computer, but just knowing if you're looking at the wall behind the computer or to the side, that might look like you're distracted or you have notes over there or something. So I wouldn't do that, but somewhere along the computer area is a good place to look.
Repeat the question yourself to them, or how does that work?
It was
Should have said that. I kind of repeated what the general idea of the question was, but the question is written. They don't say it to you.
so in your like 2-minute window, it's presented on the screen and then it shifts over to the side once the interviewer cameras come up. So you do have access to it the whole time. But they know what the question is. Otherwise they can't grade you. So
Like today I'll be answering why I want to be a vet, and then go to your answer.
Yeah, so I would
yeah.
say like today I'll be discussing why dogs are good pets. So just like a general overview of the question, and then I introduce my points.
yeah. That's a good idea. I didn't even think of that. I would say like, actually that's not true. I'd be like, regarding blah 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 blah. So I guess that is
Yeah.
something, but
Yeah, in some sense that makes sense to you. You can introduce the question instead of being like, "Hi, I'm Carly. This is what I did. This is the."
I work
So,
at this clinic.
Yeah, it's just some sort of natural, nice transition helps.
yeah. Another tip I have, I think you don't want to throw a gazillion things into one question, because at first to me 5 minutes felt really long. Then it felt really short once I had practiced it more. So when you practice, you'll kind of figure out what you can say within 5 minutes. Personally, I found 3 points to be good. I felt like I could effectively communicate what I needed to about this experience. Or 2 if they were bigger ones. There's no right or wrong answer, but you don't want to throw in every BIF experience into every question, because then it's going to sound like you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I did 3 as well.
Yeah.
And I wrote them out.
Me too.
I think the last thing I'll say is that I did pay attention to the time, and I had timed my conclusion so I knew how long it would take at a reasonable pace. I didn't want to seem rushed at all, so I knew, 20 seconds left. Say the conclusion now.
Yeah.
Had to cut myself off.
Yeah, so what happens if there's like a technical issue, like power went out or like battery died or something? Do they just be like, oh, you're done?
I was nervous about that. My dad came home from work during my interview and sat with my dogs outside, and I'm like, you're my IT guy in case anything happens, because whatever. Nothing happened in mine. I don't know what the answer to that is.
I know someone, like, their computer shut off during their interview and it like cut out one of their questions, but they just kind of like resumed after they turned their computer back on.
Oh, gosh.
So I think just trying to be kind of as professional as you can about it. Like she was basically like, oh, I'm so sorry, like my computer shut down, and then just kind of picked up where she left off, kind of thing. I mean, those things obviously happen, and I'm sure if something like major happened, like a power outage, they'd be like more understanding.
That's what I did with mine too. When my computer kept going to sleep, I'd just be like, oh, sorry, I'm here. Can you hear me? And they'd be like, yeah. And then I just kept going.
So they like pause time if you like your battery died. You get like, oh, you're
I
mean, don't let your battery die.
Yeah. So sorry, can I just ring in a little bit? So there's some extra instructions sent to you before the interview, and a couple of them are about technology, about making sure that maybe nobody else in the house is using Wi-Fi, to make sure that you have a good connection, to make sure your battery on your computer is full, or maybe even just plug it in during the whole interview. And so last year was the first year we used Kira, and it was fantastic in some ways, but there were a few people that had technical issues where they missed a whole station, or something happened with their whole interview. So guess what we did? We redid it. We kept space on the Friday afternoon for redos. That's a word. And so we ended up having not that many, but a handful of people that we redid one station, and one person had to redo I think a whole interview. So we ended up having to reschedule them, but I mean, we'll accommodate. It's not your fault if something happens, like there's a hurricane and power goes out. Thankfully it's not during hurricane season here. But yeah, we'll certainly accommodate if there's an issue. And there is like an odd a live chat that you can use for technology issues. So Kira Talent's online with us, and if there's an issue, you just click on a button if your computer's working and let them know. But there's also, like, you can email us and we'll let the Kira people know, and then we'll try to help as much as we can during your time. If not, then we'll arrange something.
Yeah, you have enough to worry about, so trying to not worry about the technological part will help.
Yeah, something I did to help, I mean, technology can only do so much, but something I did to help was I set up my whole station the night before, so all I had to do was sit down in my chair. The laptop was already positioned to the perfect angle, and I had the lighting all figured out, and that just gave me a lot more comfort the morning of. I didn't have to worry about it. I just sat outside with my dogs and breathed and was like, okay, we're gonna do this. And yeah. Another thing, this is kind of going back to the prep thing, but I wanted to mention, I cut myself off at an hour every day because you can go crazy doing this. It gets to be a lot. And you also don't want to sound rehearsed because that's no fun to listen to. So I did cut myself off there.
So this year they're changing the MMI to VPI, right? So will they be only talking about your background information, or are they still asking you extra questions other than the ones putting on your background?
Oh, it's not called the MMI, it's called the virtual personal interview, and that's what ours was called.
Yeah, we didn't have, so the way they used to do it was like 9, I think, stations, and they asked you like CASPer type questions, but in person, and you had 8 minutes to talk, I think, and 2 minutes to read or something like that. And those were like ethical questions. These are all about, they're not about your specific BIF points necessarily, but it's to bring in your BIF points. So it's not ethical based questions.
Yeah, I apologize if we've been calling it MMI. It's
so
VPI.
And I will be honest, that confused me a lot too, because on the website it said MMI style questions. I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't been preparing for MMI style because I thought it was about the BIF. It is. It's just, what is MMI about it is that you read it, then you talk about it, then you read it, then you talk about it, and no one's asking you follow-up questions.
Multiple mini interviews.
Yeah.
So the mini, that's right. So the mini interviews are the stations, right?
Yeah.
So it's not MMI in the sense that there are scenarios. It's MMI in the way that it runs.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Cool.
Can I give one last fun tip? Actually, 2. First of all,
fun.
If you're scared of recording yourself, I recorded myself once, watched 30 seconds of the video and hated it and never did it again. And here I am. What I found helpful was talking to myself in the mirror, which sounds kind of weird, but I was just more comfortable with that and could see what I was doing and kind of felt the same way. Another really funny, interesting tip my interview coach gave me was to pick the person that scares you the most in your life and have them give you an interview. Why? Because you are probably going to be way more scared having them interview you than complete strangers you've never met before. I thought that was awesome. I didn't do it because I chickened out. I was going to use my high school calculus teacher. She scared everything out of me. She would have loved to do it. So if you have someone willing to do that for you, I think that's kind of cool, because like I said in my talk earlier, practicing content is easy, but practicing working through your nerves and working through that situational thing is tough, which is why I liked the interview coaching. But yeah.
Sorry, where did you get that?
It was Future Me MD. They have it for medical students as well, but there's a whole OVC student section. A lot of my friends I've made in the last month used it. We all had different interview coaches and all had the same super positive experience. Highly recommend.
Yes, I also used it. And it was very good.
It was good. And I said to my person, I'm like, I want you to nitpick the heck out of every single one of my answers. I don't care. And it got to the point where I'm like, do I know anything? And she's like, no, they're really good, but this is what you could do. I found it super, super helpful. And the first thing she said to me was, you look like you are absolutely miserable. I'm like, well, kind of. Like, I'm not me. But she's like, think of it as like you're telling a story and that this is your opportunity to sell yourself. And that made me a lot more positive about it. And night and day from that first session with her to the second one. So yeah.
Oh, I actually have another question. So yeah, I guess you guys, some of you applied multiple times. So the times that you didn't get in, did they tell you why you didn't get in?
No, yeah, they won't share that information, but I just reflected on where I thought I could improve and then made those changes. Yeah. Sorry, I know that's not very helpful.
That's okay, no problem. Thank you though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
last
okay.
question. So where do you usually know?
They don't
You
give that
don't.
out anymore.
You can get your CASPer score beforehand. I'm not sure when they release that,
I
but
think
you
it's
just
like a
get
quartile.
The thing is, I think that getting your score, I don't even know if that would help because you don't know how they're scoring it.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that they used to just get a number and who knows what that means. Just like the CASPer scoring, like, I don't really understand how that works either. Yeah, you're just given the quartile.
And honestly, that might be something that you don't want to look at. Personally, I got third quartile in CASPer, and I was like, there goes all my dreams. Guess I'm not getting into vet school. But it wasn't the thing that made or break me. So I wouldn't look at it, to be honest. Yeah.
I know you guys touched on this, but I just wanted to confirm, how did you come up with practice questions when you got people to interview? And like, how did you decide how to practice?
Yeah, so I guess when I was first starting, I thought just, okay, I need to know why I want to be a vet. I need to know what skills I think make a good vet. I need to know what I want to work on. I need to know what skills I have and like made sure I knew because maybe it's possible that they ask you. Sorry, I'm just not. Never mind. But
I'd say just Google.
But Googling, that's what I
Google
moved to next.
Yeah.
And like Claire said, so my interview coach made up questions, so I had no idea. But my plan B was to, like Claire said, like just pick random ones, don't think about them, write them down, and then hand them to the person and say, pick some.
So what I did is I Googled some, like I looked up MMI style questions, I looked up vet school interview questions, I talked to friends who were also interviewing that year about what they thought they might ask because they have a whole like web of other people that they talk to. I also looked at my BIF and I thought, if I was an interviewer, what would I ask based on this information? So just any resources that you can, and I just made one big little document. And
Another thing, the Future Vets Club mock interviews, are those happening again this year? Phenomenal. Think about those questions. They think about them very carefully. And I found that, yeah, they were great. So do it. And that also kind of puts you into so if you don't want to pay for interview coaching, I think they have current OVC students, I believe, help. So once you're done your question, they give you feedback. Great. And I was very nervous for those too and it's funny thinking back because that was the first thing I did for interview prep because I did it before I even knew I had an interview. Terrible answers compared to what I ended with going in. And like, it's scary, but when you practice, like I felt decently confident going in. I was nervous as heck too, but my dad always says, he's like, it's good to be nervous because it shows that you really care. So.
Yeah, I was confident going in too, I think.
Yeah.
And then when I came out, I was like, I have no idea how that went. So if you feel that way too.
Yeah, I don't even remember most of the things I was asked, to be completely honest. It was a blur.
Question. Yeah, can't even.
Yeah, go for it.
For the OVC student you mentioned, was that only in the FBC's mock MMI thing, or are there any like
So
we can reach out?
So the Future MeMD has, I think there was like 8 different OVC students. The way I found out about it, I don't know if anyone's on the Must Knows Guelph Facebook page, but it was advertised in there. And then like 4 Amethyst Orcas commented and they're like, we used her and she's the reason I got in. And I was like, okay, I'm taking her then. She was phenomenal. But like I said, everyone, regardless of which person they chose on that website, all OVC students, they all loved, and probably they're there because they did a good job on their interview. So yeah, but also in the Future Vets Club one was OVC students as well. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to come and talk to all of us. I hope you all found it really helpful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Incredible advice. Hey guys, I'm gonna end it here. Thanks for coming. Have a good night. Bye.